Hi everybody, welcome to the Okanagan Military Museum. My name is Jen, and over here is Keith. And today is all about in the Navy. 2020 marks the 75th anniversary since the end of World War II. And the world would be a different place if it wasn't for the service and the sacrifice of the sailors of the Merchant and Royal Canadian Navies. Many sailors died. Tons of cargo was lost to the bottom of the ocean, but every sailor and every ship contributed to the success of winning that war. So today, we are going to explore life in the Navy. Now to start off, we are going to learn a little bit of Navy slang. So what I'm going to do is I will introduce a couple of slang words to you. We'll give you a couple of minutes to think about what they might mean before we reveal the answers. So our first two slang words of the day are tadpole and turtleback. So I'll give you a minute to think about that while Keith talks about the Battle of the Atlantic and the Okanagan connection.
So a fair number of Okanagan residents had served in the Navy, and their main job was protecting the convoys of cargo ships of the Merchant Navy that were being formed off of New York, Boston, Halifax, and Quebec City and so on, organized into these blocks of ships to take that cargo, raw materials, finished vehicles, finished munitions and so on over to England to keep England in the war. To protect these ships from the submarines, we had various types of destroyers and corvettes and small ships, warships that would have escorted them. And the German Kriegsmarine job with the U-boats were to use their underwater maneuverability and their stealth to sneak up on these convoys and torpedo the ships. So our boys had the job of finding these submarines and defending the convoys against them by using explosives and gunfire. But at the same time, they were wrestling with the weather and with the seascape and the rough seas in the North Atlantic and so on. Okay?
Okay. So, have you had a chance to think about our first two slang words? So, tadpole is, you ready for it? A sailor who has never crossed the equator. So I'm going to put Keith on the spot here and see if he can use that in a sentence for us.
All right. So you tadpoles are going to have real fun on this cruise down to Bermuda this year, especially when we get down towards Venezuela when we cross the line.
All right, good one. And turtleback, the opposite, a sailor who has crossed the equator. What do you think, Keith? Can you use that one in a sentence for us?
Because us turtlebacks, we've got it in for you guys. We've got a real ceremony and a ritual to initiate you tadpoles into King Neptune's realm. Jen?
Okay, fantastic. So we are going to take you into the permanent Navy exhibit at the Okanagan Military Museum to dive a little bit deeper into some of these stories. So in our Navy exhibit, we can see several different aspects of life on a Navy ship. But before we go into that, let's do a couple of more Navy slang words. So we've got wakey wakey and scram. So think about those for a couple of minutes, see if you can decide what they mean.
So this is our service life afloat exhibit. We're trying to simulate what it would look like inside of a corvette or a destroyer or a frigate in the 1940s, where the men were living inside the ship. Now, this ship is fixed. Our ship is fixed in position. There's no noises, there's no vibration of machinery, there's no motion of the waves and the ship's motion and so on that would give you seasickness and other fun experiences like that. But this is as close as we can get. The men would have been sleeping in the hammocks. There'd be other men that'd be awake coming off duty or on duty, and their duty shifts are about 2 hours at a time. And they might be having a smoke, having a coffee, some chai, and playing some games like bridge or whist. So they were people living in this space, and then the alarm bell goes off. And everybody would scramble out of their hammocks and wherever they are grab their boots and get up on deck or get up to the other part of the ship for their second job. So you might have a job as a stoker or the cook or a signaler. And then the action stations are called to fight the ship against a submarine, and your second job might be feeding the ammunition to the deck guns or working the depth charges here on the back of the ship as you're trying to attack a submarine. Jen?
Okay. So, related to a couple of the things that Keith just pointed out in the exhibit here, wakey wakey, did you come up with time to get up? So Keith, can you use that one in a sentence for us?
Let's see. Wow. Come on, Jen. It's time to get your butt out of the hammock. Wakey, wakey. Let's go. Show a leg.
That one was too easy. Okay. Yes. Scran is food or breakfast. Keith, what do you think?
Well, Jen, it appears to be your turn to go from the mess deck up to the galley to get our food for today, for our breakfast. So you're the scran boy today. So hop to it, I'm hungry.
Now, many Kelowna men and women served in the Navy and still do today. There are countless stories of their service. So one story that we want to share with you today is the story of Percival Roy Harding, a young Kelowna man who served in World War II. He was serving aboard the HMCS Valleyfield during the war. On May the 7th, 1944, at 0432 hours, the HMCS Valleyfield was hit portside by a torpedo, fired from an enemy convoy ship. The ship broke in half and sank within 4 minutes, 50 kilometers off the coast of Newfoundland. 124 people were lost at sea that day, including Harding. He was 22 years old. His medals, including a memorial cross, were donated by his family to the Okanagan Military Museum. And visiting the museum, you can view his picture, his medals, and this story.
So it wasn't just the men serving in the ships, whether in the cargo ships or in the warships. There were also women involved in the Navy as well. And they were called the Women's Royal Canadian Naval Service. Their nickname were the Wrens, as in the bird. This is a uniform of a Wren, and we have the Navy Cap Badge at the top. She earned a couple of campaign medals for volunteering, the first one being a Canadian Volunteer Service Medal, and the 1939-45 War Medal, denotes that she had served in uniform for Canada during that time period. And she was in the medical branch with purple in the rank insignia on her sleeve. Young women were recruited from across Canada, not only for the Navy, but also for the Canadian Women's Army Corps and the Women's Division of the Air Force, so that they could take up jobs that able-bodied men could do, but they should be doing something more warlike. So the women were trained to take on all sorts of new responsibilities, from being a driver and a mechanic to a cook, running a kitchen in a mess hall, to encoding and decoding signals and passing them on to higher command so they could figure out where the German submarines were and where they were in relation to convoys. They might be telephone operators, telegraph operators, all sorts of different jobs like that. And anything that would support the men at sea. Now, we'll go back to Jen for another slang word.
So for our next Navy slang word, the first one I'm going to show you relates to what Keith was just talking about. So the first one is go ashores. I'll give you a second to think about that. Our next word is Navy gravy, followed by duff. So what did you think about for go ashores? What would that mean? Well, it's referencing the clean uniform that you would save for when the ship was docked and you got to leave. So after weeks of not being able to wash yourself and your clothes, you would have your go ashores saved and ready. So Keith, can you use that one in a sentence for us?
Sure, Jen. Hey George, go get your go ashores. Time to get going to the pub.
Perfect. Okay, so next we have Navy gravy. Who thought that that might be referring to ketchup? And finally, Duff, the best part of any meal, dessert. So Keith, my final challenge to you, can you use Navy gravy and Duff together in a sentence?
Well, let's see, Jen. The cook's having a real hard time with our menu now that we're out of fresh food and meat and veggies, and we're gonna need a lot of Navy gravy to get that down our guts. But when he does up an apple pie, that Duff is excellent.
Wow, you even have me excited for the Duff on the ship, Keith. Now, would you show us a couple of things within our Navy exhibit that are very specific to life on a ship?
Well, we're only looking at one part of the ship here, the mess deck. There might house about 20 sailors. People are coming and going on their different shifts. Some are trying to get some sleep, some are playing some cards, there's always gambling, there's always something to bet against. Somebody's writing a letter home, and then the action station's alarm is given, and everybody's scrambling out to get to their fighting positions on the depth charges, on the deck gun, handing up the ammunition, whatever it is. The rails that are on the side of the table here are designed to keep the plates and things on the table during moderate seas. But when they're in some heavy seas, some heavy weather, everything gets tossed all over the place. So you're living with this chaos of smells, vibrations, and things thrown all over the place on a regular basis that you have to come back and clean up after you've done your job up in the upper deck facing the weather. But everything has its ship-shape place to be.
So today we shared with you a couple stories of men and women who served in the Navy. If you want to learn more, come and visit the Okanagan Military Museum. We are currently open Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Saturdays from 10 to 5.